Say, Ford Pinto, and most people think of exploding gas tanks, lawsuits, and one of the most infamous cars ever sold in America. And honestly, fair. But what if we told you that, buried beneath all the bad press, there was a version of the Pinto that didn't just avoid disaster, it outran a Porsche. Meet the Pinto Pangra, a car so rare, so bizarre, and so unexpected that most car lovers have never even heard of it. It had a turbo, it had race-ready suspension, and it could run circles around some of the most beloved imports of its time. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a meme. This was the real deal, built by a guy who saw performance potential where everyone else saw, well, scrap. It didn't come from Detroit. It came from a dealership. And the man behind it? He wasn't a car maker. He was a believer. Let's go back to the early 70s, where one dealer's wild idea turned into one of America's most unlikely underdog legends. To understand how a Pinto ended up chasing down Porsches, you've got to meet Jack Stratton, a man who didn't just sell cars, he reimagined them. Stratton was the general sales manager at Huntington Ford in California, but he wasn't your average suit-and-tie dealership guy. He was a gearhead at heart, a tinkerer with vision. While everyone else in the early 70s was mourning the slow death of muscle cars, choked by emissions laws and rising insurance rates, Stratton was asking a different question. What's next? The American V8 was on the ropes. Imports were flooding in. Drivers wanted fuel economy, not tire smoke. But Stratton wasn't ready to say goodbye to fun. He just needed a new canvas. That's when he looked across the lot and saw something nobody else noticed. The Ford Pinto. Sure, it was cheap. Sure, it was basic, but it was also light, short, and easy to tweak. To most people, the Pinto was a punchline. To Jack Stratton, it was a blank page. And what he was about to build wasn't just faster, it was smarter. Let's get something straight. The Ford Pinto was not built to impress anyone. It was cheap, it was slow. And let's be honest, it looked like it was designed during someone's lunch break. But under that bland exterior, it had one secret weapon: weight. The Pinto tipped the scales at just under 2,000 pounds, lighter than a Chevy Vega and nearly a full foot shorter than the Ford Maverick. That meant it wasn't just fuel efficient, it was nimble. It had the kind of tossable compact footprint that sports car tuners dream about. And Stratton saw it. He saw a platform that didn't need brute force. It needed precision. A car that wasn't about burning rubber in a straight line, but carving corners and catching rivals by surprise. Because while everyone else was obsessed with cramming V8s into big bodies, Stratton knew something most people didn't want to admit. The next generation of performance won't be big. It'll be smart. But even with all this hidden potential, let's be honest, nobody was buying a Pinto to turn heads. So if Stratton wanted to change minds, he had to change the face. If Stratton wanted people to take the Pinto seriously, he had to erase its biggest flaw first. It looked like a sad toaster. Enter Bob Crow, a fiberglass wizard and Stratton's go-to for turning bland into bold. Together they didn't just tweak the Pinto's look, they reimagined it. The entire front end was scrapped in favor of a new design that looked like it belonged on a Corvette Stingray, not a budget commuter. It had a sleek, shark-like nose, angular lines, and yes, pop-up headlights. Not electric ones either. These were manual, operated by a lever, the old-school way. With the new fiberglass front, the car gained nearly 10 inches of length, giving it a leaner, more aggressive stance. Slimmed-down fenders, a lower profile, and a pointed snout. Suddenly, this thing didn't just look better. It looked fast. The back half? Still mostly Pinto. Same doors, same rear quarters, but from the front, it was a different animal. It didn't scream grocery run. It whispered, "Try me." Now it had presence. But Stratton wasn't building a show car. The Pangra still had to move like a real sports machine. And that meant making sure the looks weren't just for show. They needed bite. A fast car is only as good as the road it can stay on. And Stratton wasn't building something for drag strips. He wanted a car that could dance in the corners. So, he turned to the pros at Coney and started transforming Pinto's humble underpinnings into something that could run with the best of them. The Pangra's suspension package included specially valved shocks, a 2-inch drop, wider magnesium wheels, and a fully reworked suspension geometry. This wasn't just a stiff ride slapped on cheap tires. This was a deliberate, dialed-in chassis setup. The result? On a skid pad, the Pangra could pull 0.87 G before letting go. To put that into perspective, the Datsun 240Z? About 0.73. The Porsche 914? Same ballpark. This Pinto, a car most people wouldn't even race in a parking lot, was now out-gripping legendary imports. It didn't just handle. It stuck. And all of this was before Stratton even touched the engine. But he knew cornering wouldn't be enough. Because once you caught your rival in a turn, you still had to pass them on the straight. And for that, the Pinto needed something no stock version ever dreamed of: boost. Stratton knew handling would get the Pangra noticed. But power? That's what made it unforgettable. The stock Pinto came with a modest 2-liter inline-4 that barely managed 90 horsepower on a good day. Respectable for commuting. Useless for competition. But Stratton had no interest in stuffing a V8 under the hood. That would have ruined the balance he'd worked so hard to create. So instead, he teamed up with one of the most respected names in turbocharging at the time, A.K. Miller. Together they designed a full-blown forced induction system built around the Pinto's humble 4-cylinder. The setup featured an A-Research turbocharger drawn through a 2-barrel carb, pushing 10 pounds of boost into a motor now tuned for durability with 7-to-1 compression. They didn't stop there. To handle the extra cylinder pressure, the engine also got a water injection system, not just to keep it cool, but to protect the internals under high load. That setup? It also helped the Pangra meet EPA compliance, something even GM's turbocharged Vega couldn't pull off. The payoff? A car that went from 0 to 60 in 7.5 seconds and could run the quarter mile in the low 15s. Not theoretical numbers, tested results. That made it faster than the Datsun 240Z, faster than the Porsche 914, and light years ahead of what anyone expected from a Pinto. This wasn't just a turbo kit slapped on for fun. It was an engineered package, reliable, efficient, deadly quick. The Pangra didn't roar. It whistled. And if you heard that turbo spool up next to you on the freeway, you were already too late. But here's the wild part. This beast wasn't just some secret one-off project. You could buy it. Or better yet, build it yourself. Stratton wasn't just building the Pangra for showrooms. He wanted enthusiasts to get involved. So he did something almost unheard of at the time. He offered it as a turnkey car, or a DIY kit. If you walked into Huntington Ford in the early 70s, you had two choices. Buy a fully assembled Pangra, built by the dealership from bumper to bumper, or order the parts and build your own at home. The full car with turbo suspension upgrades, fiberglass nose, Recaro-style seats, and a custom dashboard? That would set you back around $5,000. A serious chunk of change back then, but a bargain for what you were getting. Didn't want the whole thing? You could cherry-pick from 3 separate kits. Level 1. The fiberglass front fascia kit. $600. Level 2. The Can-Am suspension package. Just under $1,100. Level 3. The full turbo and powertrain system. $691. There was only one catch. The custom dash used in the dealer-built cars wasn't for sale. So unless you bought directly from Stratton, your home-built Pangra would always be missing one piece of the puzzle. Still, for a Pinto, this was unreal. Factory-built sports cars didn't come with this much flexibility or this much firepower. But despite all this, only a few ever hit the streets. For all its upgrades, its brilliance, and its outright speed, the Pangra was doomed to be a ghost. During its short production run between 1972 and 1973, estimates say only about 20 to 50 fully built Pangras were ever sold by the dealership, and maybe around 100 kits were shipped out to ambitious enthusiasts. That's it. That's the whole run. No mass marketing, no magazine covers, just a whisper among gearheads. And the rare appearance at a local car show that made people stop and go, "Wait, is that a Pinto?" Today, these cars are nearly extinct. Between rust, wrecks, and time, only a handful remain, both factory-assembled and kit-built versions. And if you ever stumble across one, whether it's in a dusty garage or gliding through a cars and coffee meet, take a closer look, because under that long nose and humble badge is one of the most unlikely sports cars ever built in America. A car born not from a corporation, but from one man's wild vision. Fast, rare, forgotten. The Pangra wasn't meant to be a superstar, but somehow, in all the chaos of the 70s, it became a legend anyway. The Ford Pinto will forever be remembered for the wrong reasons. But this version, it proved that even the most unlikely platform can be transformed into something spectacular. The Pangra wasn't about horsepower wars or badge status. It was about vision. One man, one idea, and just enough fiberglass and turbo boost to make history. It wasn't a comeback. It wasn't a marketing stunt. It was the kind of car that makes you believe. Maybe the underdog deserves a second look. Because sometimes, the most dangerous cars aren't the ones that explode. They're the ones no one sees coming. So the next time you hear someone laugh at the Pinto, tell them about the Pangra. Then show them the numbers. And if you thought this forgotten Ford was wild, wait till you meet the galaxy that looked like it was built for orbit. Subscribe to Uncover the Starliner.